American colleges are biased against Asians. It's on record. Legal disclosures have revealed admissions emails describing Asian applicants with super familiar racist stereotypes of us as interchangeable, uninteresting, subhuman drones. Our communities are right to be frustrated and furious, but the problem is racist admissions departments. Why target affirmative action? Well, we didn't. It's not like the Asians got together one night to vote on suing Harvard. And if we did, we wouldn't have sued. Various polls show 69% of Asian Americans in favor of considering racial background as a factor for college admissions. What actually happened is, back in 2014, professional litigator Edward Bloom founded Students for Fair Admission. This isn't a grassroots community movement of students, it's some lawyer who decided he wanted to end affirmative action. He did so by explicitly choosing Asian students as the faces of his campaign. He exploited our real grievances to advance his agenda, one that would return colleges to being even more predominantly in upper-class white domain. You see, removing racial considerations doesn't level the playing field. The reality is, elite colleges are more than happy to admit non-competitive students. 17% of Harvard students are white legacies, children of alumni, especially wealthy alumni, given preferential treatment. That's almost as much as the Hispanic and Black student populations combined. But let's rewind a bit. How did we get here? In the early 1960s, administrators at different colleges in the North were inspired by the civil rights movement to increase opportunities for people who'd been gatekept from overwhelmingly upper-class, white, Christian, male colleges. This included Blacks, Hispanics, Jews, women, and yes, Asian Americans, like the Japanese who'd suffered through America's concentration camps. By the late 60s, in the wake of increasingly restive student protests, more schools, more elite schools, started to adopt similar policies. And it worked, but not across the board. While white women's enrollment nearly tripled, Hispanic and Asian American Pacific Islander enrollment doubled, and Black and Native enrollment only increased by 18%. Here's the question I haven't seen enough people asking. What's the point of a college education? You see, America in the 60s was more family and community oriented than it is today. People largely saw the unit of society not as the individual, but as the family and community. One kid going to college wasn't just about whether they deserved to be there, but about how that college education could provide increased opportunities for the whole community around them. It's fundamentally, philosophically, a different approach to college than the one we see bought into today on both sides. Access to higher education wasn't just about one person's career trajectory, but about the ways they could benefit their entire community with that knowledge and access to institutions. It wasn't about whether a single person deserved to be at this or that college. It was about what that college education could give to the people around them. Ask not what your college education can do for you. Ask what you can do with your college education. And let's not forget, when affirmative action even became a conversation in higher education, America was in a post-war economic boom. There were expanding industries with lower barriers to entry and plenty of jobs that paid not only a living wage, but you could actually be a cashier at the Five and Dime and buy a house, have kids, buy a recently invented microwave, and have state-of-the-art TV dinners for those kids in that house. Today, it's a different story. American hegemony has begun to waver globally, and as Malcolm X said back in the 60s, the chickens are coming home to roost. Our nation's foundational acts of slavery, genocide, greed-driven war-making, it's all making our economy, society, and mental health a mess. That's a much bigger conversation. The point here is that general national prosperity and the safety net that it provided to many is now declining rapidly. The wage gap has never been more pronounced, and the middle class is almost dead. So where access to higher education and especially elite institutions was once seen as something that could improve an individual's life and the lives around them, it's now seen as something that could literally be the factor saving you from abject poverty. It's all a lot more cutthroat now. Look, I went to college. I actually graduated from an Ivy League school. I went to Yale. And what I noticed was that there was a huge difference between the students who were legacies, whose families had raised them to be there, and the students who had studied and worked really hard. Not saying that the legacies didn't work hard. The students who were first generation in the Ivy League, we approached the game so differently. The students whose parents, grandparents, great-grandparents had gone there, I had a classmate whose last name was on one of the buildings at Yale. Those students approached their Ivy League education so differently from the students who were first generation. So many of us thought that we were there to learn. We thought we were there to go to class and read books. That was all bullshit. The students who knew what they were doing when they showed up on day one. They had friends from their boarding schools, friends from their private schools. They had classmates whose parents had been there with their parents. College, especially the elite institutions, is not a meritocracy. The value of being at the Ivy League is just being there. It's just showing up. It's who you drink with. It's who you spend late nights with. It's who you get to know. It's frankly not about being the smartest person, not about being the best test taker. It's about meeting people. It's about getting along with people. Merit-based admissions has always been a scam. It was something used to keep queer people, poor people, immigrants, Jewish people, people of color, women out of these halls of power. Trust me, the Ivy League is not going to be destroyed overnight if some people with an SAT score 10 points lower get in or not. What will happen is if people with diverse backgrounds come in and learn how to move in those halls of power, they might actually get access to power. They might actually find ways to navigate the world after they graduate that bring resources that have been sequestered in certain spaces, certain networks, back to communities, families, neighborhoods that have not traditionally had access to them. That's what affirmative action was supposed to be there to help out with. Frankly, affirmative action has been a broken system. It underserved Blacks and Natives while helping Hispanics and Asians and giving the largest boost to white women. It needed to change. It needed to become more equal. It needed to do what it set out to do. But now, instead of being able to reform, improve, and tweak a broken system, we just have no system.